Hey, welcome back. This is Lone Wolf, and I am playing Vintage Story today. But this is what's been happening kind of an episode. I've never made one of these before. Have no idea if you'll find this interesting or not, uh, or if it'll get any views or whatever. Nevertheless, I'm going to do this, and I hope you'll enjoy it. So, I have been even more erratic. If I was erratic before, I'm certainly being a little bit erratic right now in making videos and getting them posted. They're not going up every day, which really is my goal. So what have I been doing, and why are there just not as many videos as you would like, perhaps? I know some of you would like more, and I'd like to make more for you. Well, my background is that of a software engineer. That's what I've spent most of my adult life as. But just because I'm a software developer doesn't mean that I haven't been involved with all aspects of computing. I mean, I've done network engineering. I've built and sold computers for customers. I've been a repairman, along the way. If it has to do with computing, other than designing the parts and that sort of thing, I've been involved in it. I've worked in retail, computer environments and all that sort of work. But primarily, my career was a software engineer, and that's what my passion is. But I'm very competent in all of these other areas as well. I don't know everything. I know less every day, probably, although I do still try to learn. But at this point, things are not as they used to be when I was younger. So what have I been spending my time doing? Well, if you're a follower of my channel, then you know that we have a group of us that have gotten together, Shanton, Andy Days, and myself, and we wanted to play together. So I have the ability to host a Vintage Story World. So I have my previous computer. I bought new computer parts before Christmas last year and put them together, and so that frees up my older computer, which ran perfectly fine and still has plenty of horsepower. It'll play a Vintage Story as good as my new one, but I foresaw the pricing crisis that we're all going through in the computer world, and while what I had was perfectly fine, there were things that troubled me about it. For instance, my graphics card was a PCI 4, and some of the stuff some of you people won't understand, and I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds, but my graphics card can run on 4. Well, but my motherboard only supported 3. Little disparities like that. The computer, my previous computer, is one that I actually sat down and designed and handpicked parts. I had a friend help me because, to be honest, I had really stopped paying attention to the hardware side of the world because I haven't been a customer for a long time, and so there was no reason for me to pay attention to these things. But me and my friend put this one together. That I'm talking about, my previous computer. So that right now, since I have a new computer to play on, that one is what I'm hosting Vintage Story on currently, that we call Forged in Fire. And obviously we've added a couple more players since the original 3, and added another player after that, and we've got a commitment from another person whose name you recognize. You're going to have to watch those videos to see what happens on that world. But somebody that we all know and love from playing together on RF Fury, somebody whose work you probably know, but you may not know who this person is, part of the Better Ruins group. And we've extended an invitation to another player who also makes content, and they've said, yes, I'm interested. And so we shall see how that proceeds with those two new people. And, you know, only time will tell how much time they have to play, etc. So a lot of time I've spent on getting that server set up, and I am a person that gets into the details of everything. And so when I do things, I put all of the effort into doing them that I think is necessary. So I do invest a lot of time in these things, and that keeps me from recording videos, etc. Well, one of the things that's happened recently is that I made a mistake on the computer that's hosting Forged in Fire, and because of my mistake, and this brings up nightmare history to me, I destroyed the contents on a 4 terabyte drive. Now, let's take a step back before I destroyed that drive. As a software developer, I learned the hard way about backups, multiple backups, triplicate, high redundancy on backups. Well, unfortunately, when I destroyed the content, the drive is fine. I just destroyed the content that was on it. And unfortunately, I had found myself in a situation where I had other hard drives that had failed on me. They were external hard drives, and they're the kind of hard drives that turn themselves off automatically when they're not being used. I am a fan of the company Western Digital, and the two drives that I'm talking about in particular are external USB drives from Western Digital. One was an Easy Cloud, and the other one, I don't know what it was, and it doesn't matter, but one was a 4 terabyte hard drive, and the other one was an 8 terabyte hard drive. These were my redundant backups for my precious things. One of my passions that I don't know that I've ever mentioned is that I love photography, and I learned photography towards the end of my high school years from somebody that had learned it while in high school through a class. And so because he was my friend and I saw him doing this stuff, I showed an interest, and he was happy to teach me everything that I needed to know to be able to take some good photographs. Of course, everything was analog, and there was no digital anything, and it was on film, and you had no idea if that shot you took was good or not, and you had no way to know until you spent the money to have your film processed and printed, and oh boy. Well, some handful of years back, my wife bought me for Christmas my first, what I'm going to call, real digital camera. It's real camera equipment. It's Nikon. I'm a Nikon person. There's nothing wrong with the other brands, but I'm a Nikon person, and I am someone that is loyal. I'm even a Las Vegas Raiders NFL football fan. When I was must have been 9 years old, that's when I really learned about football for the first time in my life. And where I lived, I got out the map and I picked what I thought was the closest geographical team to me, and it was the Oakland Raiders. And here I am at age 63, and I'm still a loyal Raiders fan. And anybody that knows anything about the National Football League of American football can tell you that my team sucks. My team has sucked forever, and yet I remain loyal. Um, so I'm a loyal person. My camera equipment didn't start off as Nikon stuff. It was just, in fact, my first camera I bought from Kmart. Anyways, I love photography. My wife bought me a modern digital camera, and oh my goodness, what a difference in photography. It's a whole different way of thinking. So I've taken thousands and thousands of photographs since my wife was kind enough to buy that camera for me. I've bought some new lenses, and I actually have a second um, fairly current Nikon camera body that I got secondhand. And one of my fantasies was always to have a real telescopic lens for my camera, so I could really reach out there and grab things. And I've been blessed to be able to have one of those in my possessions too. I live not too far away from Yellowstone National Park, and I've been able to go there. I haven't photographed any bears, but photographed lots of things there. But just anywhere I go, I love taking photographs. I lived in Utah for a while, and you go to southern Utah, and there's some spectacular landscape down there. Anyways, I've taken photographs of all kinds of things, but one of my favorite subjects are flowers, and I love to take photographs of flowers. And so I've done these things. So wildlife and landscape and most subjects. I've even done weddings back in the day, but I won't do weddings. Point is that I had tens of thousands of photos, and there was nowhere else but that 4 terabyte drive where those images lived, as far as I knew. And so when I lost that drive, I didn't literally vomit, but I was on the verge of vomiting. I couldn't believe what I had just done. And obviously it was an accident. I didn't intend to do it, but it was 100% my fault. For one moment, I picked the wrong thing out of several choices, and the program in which I pick things, it really doesn't provide a lot of information, but there is enough information there for me to pick the correct thing, but I failed to do that. So I lost all my photography. As a software engineer, I've got copies of pretty much everything I've written, not everything, but pretty much everything I've written, which is a whole lot of software over the years, and all of it valuable to me. So all that was on there. I knew I had backups of those things. I have, back before we had these high capacity hard drives, I store absolutely nothing on the cloud. You want to share your private information, you go right ahead, but I'm not putting my stuff out there for Microsoft to look at or Google to look at or whoever else. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with using the clouds, but I don't, and I won't, because all of this stuff is something that I'm not interested in putting out there for others to have and run their AI on and whatever. So I keep my stuff here. So if I had stuff out on the cloud, first of all, I couldn't afford to pay for enough storage on the cloud to hold my stuff. The computer that's running Forged in Fire right now has 13 terabytes of storage on it. You go look up how much it would cost me to store 13 terabytes of data every month. No, first of all, I won't pay for it. I'll just buy the stuff and it'll sit on my own. Anyways, I lost these things. I've gotten some of the stuff back. I absolutely had almost all of my software development backed onto DVDs. I have dozens of 100 disc containers of 100 DVDs each, and I have dozens of those. So back when we didn't have the hard drives, I backed up my stuff to DVDs. Before that, it was to CDs. So I have all kinds of archives, but what I didn't have was an archive of all of my photos. Over the course of the years, I collect lots of hard drives. They're still working, but they don't have the capacity that you want for today. So I've collected these things. Well, one of the things that I've done recently is I've put together a Linux-based NAS computer. That's not going to mean anything to most of you. Those of you that know will know what I'm talking about. If you want to know exactly, it's a true NAS server that I've put together. And in there, what it helps you do is it gives you the ability to take a bunch of current high capacity drives or low capacity drives or everything in between and put them in this on this computer and use them. It lets you use them as one large volume. So I have a bunch of 1 terabyte drives that I've collected over the years, and I've got 6 of them in this true NAS computer, along with 2 SSD drives, one that I have true NAS installed on, and the other one is a cache. Anyways, none of these things have I ever done before. Yeah, I've run RAID before, but anyways, so that took a whole lot of time to work on. And I've got that up and running and it's working great, but all of these things are an enormous investment of time. So I've built a NAS server. Why did I build my own thing? Why didn't I just go buy stuff? Well, because the absolute cheapest NAS device that I could find to buy was beginning at almost $600. I don't have that kind of money to spend on that. And besides that, I already own everything for the most part to use to build my computer. I did buy a used motherboard and CPU combination that also came with 16 gigabytes of RAM and water cooler, because I had 32 gigabits of DDR3 RAM that are CAS 16, and anybody that knows what I'm talking about will tell you that that's really fast, low latency memory, so it's very responsive. Well, I had troubles with the USB ports on that thing. I had all kinds of troubles getting that part that I had bought to work. So whatever time should have taken me to do that, I spent probably 6-8 times as long as it should have taken me, just because I was fighting things. Then I had another PC that I used as my desktop computer that I bought secondhand. It's a dual Xeon processor computer made by Dell. It's got 24 gigabytes of RAM in it. I didn't realize that it actually has server memory in it. So it's ECC memory. Again, most of you are not going to know. I've probably lost most of you already because I'm talking tech here. But for those of you who are here, it's ECC memory, which is very, very expensive. And so when I was having trouble with that used part, I resurrected that computer and I got TrueNAS working on that. But when you buy a product that's a pre-built product like this Dell computer, there's not a lot of room in there for you to do anything. Well, I've got old cases too, and I had one particular in mind that has 10 drive bays in it, and this is perfect for putting in lots of drives to put in NAS. So once I got it figured out working on the Dell, I went back to this used computer and I finally got everything to work on it. And I couldn't get things to boot off USB, so I had to use a hard drive and put Ventoy on it, and then I could put my ISOs on it, and then I could install from there. But trying to install off USB, it just wasn't a thing. I had to buy a USB expansion card, and I've got one in that computer so that I can have high-speed USB, but it's an add-on card, and sometimes stuff doesn't like to boot off of those things. Anyways, there was all kinds of challenges. In the end, my TrueNAS server is up and working, and it's working like a dream. And it has some incredible features that if I just, tried to do this stuff on Windows, I could never achieve. If I tried to use it on a normal Linux installation, it wouldn't have the features that TrueNAS has. So TrueNAS in the end turns out to have been a great choice. I'm not going to go into it, but so one of the things I've spent time is building myself a secure and reliable storage device that has some redundancy built into it. I mentioned I had the two Western Digital external USB drives. One was a 4 terabyte, one was an 8 terabyte. The 8 terabyte started clunking. The 4 terabyte, I could hear that it was failing. Before it failed, I got stuff off of it, and I had to get stuff off of the 8 terabyte drive too. But I'm not going to trust those for my precious things. Well, that left me with the single point of failure, and then I made my mistake. So that's where the drive to put my TrueNAS server together so that I have a place to store all my things and have some redundancy, and that's working fine. So I've taken the old computer and turned it into a vintage, not turned it into, I've just got Vintage Storage Server on it hosting our world. Well, some of our players have had a little bit of a challenge with connection issues. They're in Europe and I'm in America, and so I have this old the other Dell computer I mentioned to you with the dual CPUs in it and 24 gigabyte of ECC RAM, and so I went and I installed Linux Mint on that as my operating system, and so I've spent tons of times working on that too. So I wanted to see, it's well over a decade old stuff. I mean, this is old stuff, okay? But it still functions, and if you buy a pre-built computer from Dell, you're probably going to get an absolute excellent top quality device. I've never purchased any Dell new, but I've purchased several of them secondhand, and I've been amazed at the quality and the construction. But don't expect to use it as a general purpose, as something that a hobbyist, do-it-yourselfer would like to do, because they're not going to include room for you to expand in. Well, so 3 days ago, I decided that I wanted to put Vintage Story on it. I was curious if this would help with connection issues. Windows isn't designed. I mean, it's just Windows 10. No, I will never have Windows 11 on any computer that I own. So, I wanted to see if the Linux experience would be better for my European friends that were playing on Forged in Time. So over the course of 3 days, well, the first 2 days was getting Linux installed and everything working the way that I want to. And then yesterday is when I decided that I wanted to get Vintage Story on there and run the server on it. Well, getting Vintage Story installed on Linux Mint was really easy. That was super simple. The things that you can download off of the Vintage Story site, installing the client, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, worked just as well there as it does on Windows. So of all of you who are afraid to try Linux, you're more afraid of this operating system than you probably should be. But I'm also going to criticize all these people on the internet telling you, oh, you need to switch to Linux, it's so easy. They're lying their butts off to you. For them, it is exactly as they say, but these are not your normal Windows users. These are people that are hardcore Linux guys, and for them it is that easy. And Linux can be that easy. And if you use Windows the way most people do, you can replace your Windows with Linux very easily. But if you want to go outside of using your browser and doing your email and browsing the internet, which is what most people use a computer for, most people don't use computers for what they can do. It's a very simple thing on Linux, so they're not lying to that extent. And if you want an Office software on there, you've got free stuff that works just as good as the Microsoft stuff, and it's not out there sitting on a cloud, and you don't have to pay a subscription fee every year. It's all free. The same with the operating system. Linux doesn't force updates on you. They'll let you know if there's an update, but it's completely up to you. The Windows experience, Microsoft is going to install updates whenever the heck it bloody wants to, and your computer can be occupied for up to an hour dedicated to these updates, and they don't ask for permission at all. You might need that computer to get some report out, but you can't even access it. All right, I'm pissing and moaning on Microsoft, but I have good reason to do so. And Windows 11, if you're running it, you're a product. Microsoft is spying on everything that you do. They know everything you do. And unless you know how to stop it, all you are is a product for them to make money on. All right, getting back to Linux. So, Vintage Story, client, easy peasy. But it's not on a computer that I would ever want to play Vintage Story client on, because while it does have an NVIDIA GPU on it, and that GPU was great in its day, it was fantastic in its day, it is in fact a 1050 Ti with 4 gigabytes of RAM. Hey, that's great. And you know what? I can play it on that old, decade-old computer, okay? I did it. It actually didn't play too bad. I actually got 60 frames per second. I turned some settings down, but it wasn't aggressive. So yeah, it'll play even on that old thing on Linux. But I wasn't installing the client. Was never my goal, was to, hey, let's play on this computer. My goal was to put Vintage Story Server on there. This is where Vintage Story, in my opinion, and it is an extremely strong opinion, and I'm a highly technical, educated, experienced, know what the hell he's doing, but doesn't know everything person. So when I speak with authority. Not that I know everything, okay? Installing the server was a shit show. I don't swear on my videos, but I'm just going to tell you as it is. It was a shit show. There needs to be a lot of work done on running a server on Linux. I can tell you this. I spent literally 8 hours yesterday trying to get Vintage Story Server running the way that it does right out of the box on Windows. When I play Vintage Story, and at this very moment as I'm recording this, on my computer where you see my game running, I have a server running in a different window, in a console. I start a server and it's running on the same computer that my client is, okay? I know extremely well how to run a Vintage Story server. I have years and years of doing it. I was an admin for probably 2 years on Aura Fury, and I was involved in updating and installing the server's software on Aura Fury's server. Now, I didn't have access to the operating system itself on theirs, but I'm just showing you some of my credentials. I don't know everything. I've played with Linux since the days it was born. I used to work on Unix machines, which came before Linux, and I used to write software on them. I've never been a Unix, now Linux, uh, expert whatsoever. I know my way around it. I am confident to use it, but the level of what I know versus what I know about Windows, there's an enormous gulf of difference between my body of knowledge from Windows to Linux, but I am still competent on Linux. Eight hours. There is no exaggeration. 8 hours it took me to get Vintage Story server running as I require it to do on Linux Mint. If you start the server on Windows in a command window, whatever flavor you want to use, you type in the name of the executable, it will run. You'll see all of this information passing by, scrolling on your window and telling you information about what it's doing. Once it's up and running, you'll actually see it tell you that okay, we've got to this point and it's running, and it's just sitting there because no client is connected. And then on the same computer, I start the client, and now in my window where the server is running, I see the name of a player that has joined the server. It lets me know if they're a VIA supporter, which I am. VIA supporter means that when you bought the game, you paid more money than they wanted, and that makes you a VIA supporter, which I am. But it tells me all kinds of things that are happening. It shows me when it's, saving the world file. It tells me if there's an error. It tells me if something took too long in the server to do, and it gives you all kinds of feedback information. And I'm a nerd, and I love that crap. I eat that stuff like candy. So for me, it's extremely valuable. Well, since I upgraded and got a new computer, I don't have to run the server on the same computer, but I am running it on this computer. But I'm also now hosting a world on my other computer, and it's run exactly like it would be on my everyday computer, Windows computer that I'm using right now. But so I've got the server running. In order to connect to it, I have to connect to a multiplayer server. You can't just start the client and play on the server that's running on your same computer. You have to connect to a multiplayer server even though it's on the same computer. So it's the same way as playing on any server around the world. 8 hours. 8 hours. A marathon trying to get Vintage Story server to work on Linux and give me the same results as it does on Windows, with me doing nothing but starting a program. And there's you people that are Linux people and that have gone through this and do this, you're listening to me. Well, what the hell was the problem, Lone Wolf? What was so hard? Well, there was nothing hard about getting the server to start and run. Yeah, that's not a problem. Although I didn't realize at first that when I started it, it actually was failing. It gave me no information of failure. It gave me no feedback whatsoever. Okay? This is a problem. It was silent on any problems. So I didn't even have any, as far as I knew it launched and was fine. I had no reason to go look in the log files. All of you that know how to do this, you've been screaming at your computer saying, look, just all you had to do is go look in the log files. Well, I know that, okay? Give me some credit. I've been around the block. But as far as I knew, it was working fine. But it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. It gave me no feedback, you see. Well, I was using the exact thing that the Vintage Story people gave me to start the server on Linux. I'm using the exact thing, unmodified, unchanged, exactly out of the box that they provided to me. Man, I did a lot of learning yesterday. I learned about a thing called Screen. Never heard of it before. I learned about, well, I had to become an expert in the script file that they use to start the server. But when I installed things, Vintage Story didn't tell me where it installed them to. So I didn't even know where it installed to on Linux. Okay? Any installation of Windows, I can tell you how to go find your Vintage Story. Unless you're somebody like me, my Vintage Story never lives where Vintage Story automatically installs it to. And I always have multiple instances or copies or versions of Vintage Story installed on my computer. So it would never work if I left it in the default place. But I don't even know where default is on Linux. And believe me, I know how to use the internet. I know how to ask questions. I know how to read. I know how to understand what a web page is telling me. And I did not find, well, yeah, the website, Vintage Story's website told me where it installed. It was wrong, but it told me where it installed. It just happened to be wrong, completely wrong. And I am not the expert on Linux, and I have not found yet the tools that equal what I use on Windows every day. Those tools all exist, and I will find them over time. But I'm really only starting my journey as a Linux everyday person in recent history. I still have Windows on the computer that I'm using, but it's going to be changed to Linux. And the computer that's hosting Forged in Time is running the Windows that I used every day to play Vintage Story on. That will not stay Windows. It's going to be Linux. The computer that I'm playing right now is going to be Linux. I am holding up proudly my middle finger to Microsoft because they've lost their way. Microsoft provided me an excellent living for 4 decades as a developer. I have a lot of things to say thank you to Microsoft for, but they have lost their way. Even if you don't know that, that doesn't mean it's not true. Microsoft has lost its way. And Linux, over the decades, has finally reached a point to where it's good enough for someone to leave Windows and use Linux. This is not a Linux promotion that I'm doing in this video. I'm telling you of the hell that I went through trying to get Vintage Story server running the way that it should. And I'm just telling you about what has taken all my time over this really, past month or so when I started doing all this stuff. So in the end, I have Vintage Story server doing exactly what I want, and it is working exactly like it does on Windows, and I have Vintage Story installed exactly where I want it to be on Linux, and nothing is where Vintage Story wanted to put it in the first place. And I can tell you where it wanted to put it makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. But I had to go through the script file that they provide, and I had to absolutely 100% study it and learn it because I'm not a Linux expert. I never heard of this thing called Screen ever before in my life until yesterday. In the end, what did I do to get it to work the way that it does on Windows? The way that it comes default from the development team from Vintage Story, there's nothing wrong with it. It'll run just fine on Linux for the people that don't like to get into the weeds. So I am not the target audience of how the development team wants things installed. The way they have it, it works perfect for the masses, but I am not counted amongst the masses. I grew up in the days of DOS, running a terminal and typing commands is actually an old, fuzzy, warm place that I grew up in. It's this gooey stuff that I had to learn how to use. So there's nothing scary about Linux to me. There's nothing scary about the terminal to me. But my history says that I'm able to have an operating system bend to my will, not me conform to what its choices are. And this instance of that, my wanting Vintage Story to work the way that I expect it to work, is not why I had to spend 8 hours trying to get the server to work the way that it does on Windows. Okay? I wasn't asking it to do anything weird. The fact that I want it installed to where I want it installed has nothing to do with why it took me 8 hours to get things running. Okay? So me getting Vintage Story to bend to my will is not the why behind the 8-hour session I had to get Vintage Story server running the way that I expected it to before I ever began this process. I expected it to work just like it does on Windows. And guess what? Once you figure it out, it does run exactly like it does on Windows. But that is not how the default is set up. There was an error and I got no feedback. Yes, everybody that's screaming at me right now, I could have looked in the log folder. But to begin with, I didn't even know where the hell that was. And looking at Vintage Story's documentation gave me the wrong information about where in the hell that shit was found on the computer. So everybody that's wanting to yell at me, just shush yourself for a minute and just listen. It needs to be better. It needs to be improved. When you go to the command that you issue that's provided by Vintage Story for starting the server actually is mildly interactive. And there's an option to tell it to start the server, stop the server, execute a command, status, and there's this thing called setup that you can pass it as a parameter. Hell, I didn't know any of that. I just expected it to start the program for me. Why would I need it to accept commands? I'm running it on Windows. I just type in the console, the terminal, a command, and we're done. I don't need some script to run to send a command to Vintage Story. And for the people that don't know what the hell they're doing, that's probably a really good option for them. But where in the hell? Okay, so one of the options is when you start the server, there's this thing called setup that I didn't know anything about. I only learned about it by studying the script file to begin with. Had no idea there were these options, because when you start it, it doesn't tell you anything about these options. I think it must have told me enough to know that I needed to tell it to start. Whatever the case was, it was overwhelming. The information it provided, I don't use because of my experience, I'm not paying as much attention to the detail sometimes as I need to be. So part of the problem is on me. I will own that, but not 8 hours worth. Okay. I will own that I was part of the problem. It's not all on Vintage Story. So the way that it starts from the people from Vintage Story, it starts, and they, honestly, I still don't know why they're involving screen at all. And you have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, but the people that do know what I'm talking about, and I'm not trying to teach you all this stuff. They're using screen, but as one of the parameters, they are specifically telling it to not output anything, because screen is used to give it some place to output information, but the way they have it configured, it automatically disables any output from the server. So you don't get any feedback from the server. And again, I'm not an expert on screen. I only learned about this thing yesterday, so give me a break. But by default, it tells it they're using it. You're not going to understand what I mean, most people, but those that know, it passes that to parameter because they want it to run as a daemon, so that the terminal is released back to you so you can use it for other things. Well, happy dappy duty booty, okay? That's not the behavior I expect. That's not what it does on Windows, okay? I'm sure that I could figure out how to get it to do it that on Windows, because what they're doing in Windows term is starting it as a service on Linux, okay? That's a great thing. But they, by default, by making it run as a daemon, not demon, a daemon, they're also deliberately telling screen to not output anything, and it detaches from screen. Well, they've detached it, which means that if I use screen to go and get the information from it, it's detached and there's nothing for me to get screen to show me the output. I find this to be a huge issue. I've mentioned setup, which I didn't know about to begin with. So I did run the script and I passed it the parameter setup. One of the things that setup does is it prevents me with the location of where it's going to install, which I never saw, okay, because I didn't know there was this, oh, well, you got to pass it setup. And it might be documented properly on their website. I haven't gone back and looked at it. I will own that I will own my part of the problem here. I know that I made mistakes. I'm sure it's better documented than I realized, and that I missed those things. So I'm going to own that. I'm not blaming everything on Vintage Story, but I am blaming the fact that they have it set up to run in a certain way, which is an unexpected behavior and vastly different from what it does on Windows. This is probably done. It's probably excellent the way they have it set up, but completely not what I expected. If you're out there renting space to host Vintage Story, the way that they have it set up is exactly right, because you don't have access to Linux to begin with. Well, I have access to Linux. I have access to the real operating system. I have access to a terminal. But if you're installing Vintage Story on something that you're paying money for them to host it on, the way that they have it set up is precisely the way it should be. But that's not what I expected. It's not what I expected at all. But I had to study their bash script. I had to do lots of getting educated. And I really started from ground zero. I'm sure at some point I've written a batch script before, way back in the in the 80s, but I haven't written a batch script since then, and whatever I knew, I have long since forgotten. So the way that I'm giving them their credit because the way they have it working is perfect for a server that you cannot get to the operating system on. So for most people that want this installed on Linux, it is set up perfect for them, and few would ever know how to set it up the way that they do out of the box, which is perfect for it running on some computer that you don't have access to, an operating system that you can never touch. It's perfect for, hey, I want to host Linux, Vintage Story on your Linux server. It is absolutely correct for that, and I will give them all the credit that they deserve. It just didn't behave as I expected. And if it's documented and says that, I missed that documentation. And I do have a problem where I don't read everything. I skip over things because I'm a slow reader. It's a problem that I have to deal with in all aspects of my life, and so I will skip as much reading. I will scan. Instead of reading, I will scan the documentation for the information that I'm looking for. And so I absolutely will miss part of the documentation. This has bit me in the ass before numerous times, and since recent bites in my ass because of this, I'm trying to slow myself down and be more deliberate in my reading of the instructions. So I'm giving them 100% credit for how they have it set up, because it is absolutely perfect to go run on somebody else's Linux computer. It's exactly the way it needs to be, because you don't have access to the console output, which is what I went into this expecting. And then there was an error, and it never told me about this error. It should have put information on the effing screen and let me know that there was a problem. What it told me is that, yeah, it started. That's what it told me. It gave me the information of success. Why would I think that there's a problem when it says, yes, it's working? That's the information it gave me. It knew that there was a failure, but because it detached itself from being able to write to your terminal, which is how you start the thing, or you could start it from, a file manager too, there's no feedback. Yep, the log files are there. Wherever the hell it installed it by default, I don't even know where the hell that was. So I couldn't even go look at the log files if it had even occurred to me, which it did not. Only by studying the batch script did I eventually come to understand what it was doing, how it was doing it, and what I needed to do to get it to run the way that I expected it to do, and that it is fully capable of doing. So my expectation was completely different than what they targeted their method for starting the server on Linux. They made something that is perfect for what their expected typical audience is. So where does that leave me in their plan? If you're going to do what I did, then that means I need to take the responsibility to know what I need to know to get it to work the way that I need to get it to work. What would be very delightful is if they said, if somewhere it said, and it might. Remember, I've just told you that I don't read everything, so it might be documented. It would be nice to have a way to start the server on a operating system that you have no control of. But it would be also equally critical for someone like me that has control of the operating system, that I can do anything that I want to on that computer and have it start and give me the console output. I've modified the way the program starts. I've modified the script file so that it doesn't detach from screen, and it does give me the output. Screen here is very important, something I've never known anything about. I'm not an expert on it, but through lots of research yesterday, I figured it out. It would be nice if they included a headless server startup, but also one for people like me that have access to the operating system. I believe it is done the way it is done because of an assumption that they make. But I think they also make the assumption that if you're going to run this not on a headless, by headless I mean you have no idea what it's doing when you start it other than the log files. They expect that you're using some third-party tool in a browser to see what's going on with your server. So, but on the server itself, you get no feedback, okay? They're log files. Anyways, my conclusion is that is what they have done this for. So I'm calling that headless, something that you don't have access to the operating system. I'm calling that headless in this conversation. So that's what I mean when I call it headless. For somebody that has access to the head, me, I think there should be a way to start the server for somebody that has access to the head. And by default, gives you the console output and runs like it does on Windows and runs as I expected. And I don't think I should have to become as educated about Linux as I became yesterday to get Vintage Story Server to run the way that Vintage Story has shown me it wants to run on Windows in this way, and I expected it to run the exact same way under Linux, and there's no reason that it can't. I can tell you that 100% because I have gotten it to run and behave exactly as it does on Windows. It leaves me a place where I can type in commands. I don't need to run the script to execute a command. Or at least I believe that. I guess I need to test some more. I only got it up and running, so I still have lots more learning to do on using this thing. I'm assuming that I can type in the terminal a command that Vintage Story will respond to. I don't know. I have lots more to learn. But it shouldn't have taken me 8 hours to get to the point to where Vintage Story runs and outputs just like it does on Windows. I think it's an oversight, and I am actually friends with a person that I believe wrote this startup script, and I really like this person. He is very kind. I consider him a friend, and nothing that I said is meant to be derogatory to my friend at Vintage Story. I truly do consider him to be an actual friend. And I'm not saying this to criticize Vintage Story. I'm sharing this with you because where have you been, Lone Wolf? What the heck have you been doing, and why can't you produce videos every day? I can, but I've been highly distracted taking care of other business because I will not have a single point of failure for my precious documents. I have recovered my my Nikon photographs up to the last 3 years, but the last 3 years are gone. and I will never get all the images that I took in the last 3 years, but I have recovered years of my Nikon digital camera photographs. So that's the best news in all of this, is that I didn't lose what I initially thought that I lost. And I am so grateful that over the years I have learned to back crap up. They were backed up into drives that I have moved on from for capacity reasons or whatever other case, but I now have a true NAS server that will help protect my data. I'm not getting it to protect my data as well as it can because I don't have the money to go out and just buy more hard drives. There are ways to take advantage and increase redundancy, but I own what I own and I don't have money lying around to go buy more hardware. But compared to having this stuff being taken care of by Microsoft, we have gone leaps and bounds beyond anything that Microsoft by default can do. And that's taken a lot of time. Each one of these processes taken a lot of time. So my attention has certainly been divided and has distracted me from playing this game that I love and that I love sharing with you. I guess wrapping this into me being logged on to Vintage Story is because this is the subject of my channel, is playing this game. And some of you I know like having behind the scenes information because you've said so. So here is my first attempt at sharing information that I would never share with you. And it'll either be watched or it won't. It'll either get likes or it'll get thumbs down. It'll get views, it'll get watch hours. Whatever happens to the video is what's going to happen. I'm not counting on this being of value to anybody, but anybody that's curious, you know a lot more now about what I've been doing and what's been going on in my life, and hopefully some will find this fascinating. So in summary, I've been busy working my butt off getting stuff set up so that I don't have a catastrophe like I just experienced and lost things that are extremely precious to me that I will never be able to replace. And so any time that I spent on doing this didn't cost me money, but it cost me an absolute ton of time. And I've had to learn a lot of things. I don't mind learning new things. It's just not as easy as it used to be for me, and so it takes longer, which goes into that amount of time that all these things have taken up. I've had lots of battle with hardware, primarily USB ports not working on old crap. And even and the USB ports that were on old crap were old slow USB ports anyways. So not ideal. I've learned a lot. I've gained a lot of knowledge that I didn't have. And if you have questions about what I've talked about, I will be happy to answer any questions that you want. Post comments. I don't think I believe that I almost never not reply. I'd like to say that I respond to every comment. But I suspect in the past I haven't. And sometimes I would miss a reply to a reply because YouTube doesn't tell me about those things automatically. So I'm learning and growing as a YouTube content creator. All of these things I have to learn. They're all new to me. I've been posting videos on YouTube now just barely over 2 years, but yeah. Anyways, I'm doing an awful lot of learning, and most people my age don't do anything to learn anything more. But I've worked really hard to get my mind to know the things that it does. And while I've lost many things in my capabilities. I'm still happy to learn, but man, I get frustrated so easy. And if you don't think I was cursing during my 8 hours of trying to get Vintage Story server to work the way I expected it to, well, then you're a better person than me. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have other questions, by all means ask. If I know the answer, I will share that information with you. If I don't, I'll say, well, sorry, I don't know about that. But I am so grateful to the people that have supported my channel. And like I said, I know some of them are interested in this video. Some people are going to watch 3 minutes of it, and that'll be more than they need. And that's okay. I didn't make the video for them. I made it for those that are interested and curious. So thank you for watching. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing to my channel. If you like this video, please click on that like button. Please consider making a comment, even if it is only an emoji. It helps the channel. My goal has been to share something that I love, in this case, Vintage Story, to share what I know about it. I try to teach as I play, and I want Vintage Story. One of my purposes is to promote Vintage Story. As long as we have people playing on Minecraft, we don't have enough people playing on Vintage Story. I don't think people are fools for playing Minecraft. I've played it for years and years. But from the moment I purchased and launched Vintage Story, there's never been a moment where I thought, gosh, I'd like to go play Minecraft again. I watched one of my friends recently playing current Minecraft, and I didn't realize how horrible the graphics are on Minecraft. That alone would make it difficult for me to play on after playing on a game that is so beautiful as is Vintage Story. The depth of the game, there's no comparison. And Vintage Story isn't made for everyone. It's a brutal game, deliberately brutal, deliberately difficult. I don't agree with all of the direction that the developers want to take this. I don't know if I ever want to play 1.22. Everything I read about this upcoming version, for me, I don't want it. Will I play 1.22? Well, I certainly will give it an honest try, but I read about everything they're doing in it. And everything I read says to me, I don't want that. I don't want that. For instance, why in the hell do berry bushes need to be more complex? Just a for instance, just a simple thing. Berry bushes grow without having to fertilize them. Oh my gosh. Really, Tyron? We have to fertilize berry bushes? Have you ever been in the woods, Tyron? Have you ever seen berry bushes growing in the wild? They don't need fertilizers. All right, I just got on my high horse. Now I'm going to back off it. My point was that I love this game, and I want more people to play it, and I love sharing with you something that I truly love. And I know some of you like what I do and appreciate what I do. Thank you again for your time, and if you've made it to the end of this video, all I have to say is, wow. Thank you. Come watch my next video, won't you? Goodbye.